Blessings, fam. Here we at it again. We getting into it tonight. Urban Apologetics. We're going to get into Damon's chapter talking about the Nation of Islam. Let's go. Hey, party people in the place to be, man. This is your boy, the chaplain, Captain America, as they call me in the in the UA. Hey, man, it's good to see y'all tonight. My name's Kevin Benton Jr. I'm grateful for everybody that's here with us already. Still already got a couple of people, Nate2D2 in YouTube and Revelator, and a couple others I see getting ready to jump in. My boy BK Apologist Alfredo is with us on tonight. Say what's up to the people, man.
Yeah, what's going on? Part of people in the place to be. What's good, Kevin Kev?
So my intro is not as dope as yours. The what's popping, but you know we get it popping every now and then. So I'm really excited tonight. Tonight is week 6, right, of our series. So we've been flip-flopping channels, talking about going through the brand new book out. Well, it ain't brand new out there, but it's still new. But not brand new. Talking about urban apologetics, restoring Black dignity with the gospel. Of course, the editor, Dr. Eric Mason. So many different other people have been involved in making this work happen. And I have just been enjoying going through it chapter by chapter. Each week, we are trying to go through a different chapter and just talk about the different insights and different things like that that we've learned, and different things like that. So, BK, how have you been enjoying the book so far, bro?
Oh, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's a one-stop shop for defending the faith to the urban community. It's like it's everything we are in a book.
Yes.
And it's so great that, and it's also important because not everybody is on the internet like that. We think people are because we are, but most people, they still use the internet for very, check their emails or maybe the news, whatever, but they're not getting their theology or their teachings from the internet. So having a physical book to give to those people is very, very important. So.
Absolutely. And I've gotten so much incredible feedback from everybody who has been partaking in the book. I actually, we didn't even get a chance to talk about this off air, but it's good, even now I've gotten with some friends that are here in Washington area. I live in Washington State. Who have gotten the book, it was on back order for a while, but who have said, hey, that they want to go through the book and start a book club. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to start a book club at one of the Black-owned coffee shops here in Washington State in downtown Tacoma. We're going to get a group of people together and just go through it week by week and different things like that. So I'm excited about doing that, excited about the people. My dad actually got the book this week, and he started digging into it. The next thing you know, he's sending me text messages with little quotes from the book and stuff like that. So it's really cool to be able to go through it with him. And a lot of other people, that are my friends have just been hitting me up privately and saying that they got the book and how much they're enjoying it. So I'm just grateful for the impact that it's having. Grateful to see, Dr. Mason and so many other people who have, responsible for putting this thing together. But the impact that it's having is exactly what I think Dr. Mason and those who are instrumental in creating it, I think is exactly what they envision. And I think it's just going to grow. To hear that it's getting into colleges and going to becoming a part of curriculum and different things, it's phenomenal to see the impact that it's having, man. You want to speak to any of that while we greet the people?
No, I mean, it's something that, because I feel like, it's a victory for the entire UA community, even though I had, no part in it. But technically, we kind of all did. We all are we all have our lanes that we ride, and we all have different parts of the gospel that we like to accentuate to the people. And I feel like this book encompasses all the nuance and all the things that we teach, on our Perspective YouTube channel. So it's almost like a literary soundtrack to our community.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and much needed. I knew some things, but Damon really he just blew this whole thing open. And he has roots, his family growing up in the nation. He talks about that in this particular chapter, in chapter 6. So I was really blessed to be able to see all of the information in the background, the context. Somebody, and I think it's a really good name for him. Somebody on his live last night, which was dope, called him the king of context and everything. But I really thought that this one, he really did go back into the roots of Nation of Islam and show how how it developed over the years, which for me, of course, was just like, man, how did they get to this point where all of this stuff is going on and people are still following it? Just a lot of mass confusion. But, I want to go ahead and let's go ahead and dig into it. But those, I love, my slides, and I know BK is like that too. But before we do that, they say what's up. I know Michelle is in the building. It's good to see you on tonight. Revelator, we already said what's up to you. Nate 2D2 is in the building. Adrian Jones, so good to see you. And everything. So thank you all for tuning in and being with us. I did share the link in the Bodega group. So if you are interested in jumping on with us on tonight, the invitation is open. By all means, come on and jump on with your boys, and we'll go ahead and conversate and see what insights and everything stuck out to you all about this particular chapter in the book. So BK, would you open up and just say what blessed you about this particular chapter in the book that Damon wrote?
Well, I mean, it just reminded me of, my teenage years growing up in New York. I mean, I'm still in New York. Yeah. I'm born and raised New York native, and late 80s, early 90s, this was very much a part of like hip hop culture. For many of us in New York, after the actual events of Malcolm X and stuff like that, for a lot of us, we were introduced to Islam via hip hop.
Right.
So because, for a lot of people, they don't know that there was a pro-Black moment in hip hop where everybody's wearing the black medallions and the kufis and
Yeah, I rocked it a little bit. I ain't gonna front.
It was I mean, it looked great, and you sound like what you're talking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah. And so it kind of it gave me a nostalgia effect when reading this passage, because there's like rap lyrics were coming to me while I was reading the chapters. Like it reminded me.
Yeah.
So
what stuck out to me wasn't a rap lyric, but Erykah Badu. She had a line in there. You rush into destruction because you don't have nothing left. The mothership can't save you, so
right.
It's gonna get left. Right. So I was like, man, I didn't know nothing about no mothership. And then when Damon brought that part out in this particular chapter, I was like, wow. And it's amazing to me how much we were being indoctrinated through rap and through neo soul and different things like that without even knowing it, but they knew it. And so it's just like, man, thank God for my eyes being opened and for, the truth of the gospel being, presented to me. And then, the erroneous teachings that have been perpetrated out there by them as well. So it's just amazing to see how you can look back now and see all of this stuff that you just never picked up on before and everything. So
one more thing. Also, one thing we can learn is they were great at contextualizing their theology.
Yeah.
Great at it, for it to permeate the music to a point where you couldn't do a rap song back then without mentioning some kind of, 5% / Nation of Islam rhetoric in your verses. You just couldn't. Like it was trendy.
Yeah.
It was cool to do that. You from Brand Nubian, Poor Righteous Teachers. And not too long ago, people like Jay Electronica. He went on stage, let me say it was about 2 summers ago at the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival, and he was dressed head to toe NOI. He had the whole NOI with him with Jay-Z.
Wow. And see, that's one of the things that I think this chapter, I ain't gonna say think, I know this chapter is still very much needed because there's still people out there that are trapped in this deception that, is taught by the Nation of Islam. But for me, I don't know if it's maybe because I grew up around military communities and different things, but I have not seen the Nation of Islam at all. In my 42 years on earth, I have not seen anybody that's a part of the Nation of Islam, nor anybody that is flocking towards their teaching and different things. But again, I haven't seen a whole lot. I think I've met maybe 3 or 4 Hebrew Israelites. So again, just because it's not running into me, I still feel the need to be prepared and make sure that other people are being prepared as well.
Absolutely.
So before we get into anything else, say what's up to my sis. What's up, sis? Delicate Flower, aka Shotty Mills. What's going on? How you doing?
Hey everyone, I'm doing fine. I am so sorry. I was having internet issues. But look at the Lord. I'm here.
I was messing with Damon last night when his live went out for just a hot second when his picture went off. I said, why somebody go ahead and try and blame this on the devil?
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
good stuff. Shani, before we get into this, you want to just kind of bring out, for this particular chapter, what stuck out to you? What blessed you about this particular chapter that Damon wrote?
I think so. Of course, I'm just blessed by Damon just laying it plain, making it plain. Okay. Damon told it, but I think what blessed me the most from the chapter was his testimony and that of his family.
Yeah.
I literally was in tears at the end, as he started talking about, his mom and his sibling, his sister. I was awashed in tears just to see God just move in that family. As he was talking about Mr. Brown, who gave them the tracts when they were in Florida, it just moved me to tears, and I thought it was such a beautiful layout of the chapter to introduce it with his own story, to bring the truth out, the apologetics was just fire, and then to end with such a beautiful testament to just the power of God, and the power of the gospel. So that was my favorite part. His testimony was just amazing to me.
Man, you got a fan out there. Miss Titus said you're looking like a What's up, Miss Titus? And then Revelator said he's seen a few, I guess, people from the nation in his years in the Navy and everything like that. So they even had permission on the ship to meet for Islamic services. Yeah. So even in the military, I, of course, provide for the religious needs and different things, the First Amendment rights of all people of all faiths. And Muslims are included in that, but I have not seen any people who are part of the Nation of Islam in my time in there as well. So, but nevertheless, again, it's good for us to be able to get that information out there for anybody that may actually be a part of that. So I want to dig into it again. This is chapter 6, part of the larger work that was part of the book, of course, Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel by Dr. Eric Mason. Now, the cool thing is, like, Dr. Eric Mason, I'm being really nice because I found this graphic online, and I wish I could show y'all the picture that they had up there before I replaced it with this one. It did not do him no favors whatsoever. It was just a horrible pic. So, Dr. Mason, I looked out for you, man. I hooked the picture up. Somebody did not favor you when they did that joint, but nevertheless. So the first person that he really digs in and starts talking about in this particular chapter is Noble Drew Ali and everything. And so on this, BK, would you read that for me real quick and as we dig in?
Sure. The Nation of Islam has its roots in an early Black nationalist Islamic sect called the Moorish Science Temple of America, founded by Noble Drew Ali. Noble Drew Ali taught that the true identity of Black Americans was ethnically Moorish and spiritually Islamic. Noble Drew Ali believed himself to be the final prophet sent by Allah to the so-called Black people in America.
All right. So as we can see, that obviously that prophet there is misspelled. That's what happens when you're trying to put these slides together at the last minute. But again, you can kind of get to see where they're coming from in there. That was not a mistake in the book. That's a mistake in me transcribing it. But again, Damon is doing a good job of drawing how they actually started and where their roots were in the Nation of Islam, all the way up until because most people, myself included, I did a little bit research over the last year in some other teachings that I had done. But all I knew about the Nation of Islam coming up was Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, and now Louis Farrakhan. But I had no idea about Noble Drew Ali and then someone that we're going to get into in the next particular portion and everything like that. But again, this really all started with him. And even the Moorish Science Temple of America was really big back in the day, and different things like that as well. So this is bigger than just Louis Farrakhan, bigger than Malcolm X, bigger than Elijah Muhammad. This is really who it all started with. BK, did you want to add anything to what was already?
Yeah. I mean, there's an old adage that the more things change, the more they stay the same, And with Noble Drew Ali, we know a lot of his shenanigans when he was in Jersey. He did a lot of like magician tricks. He was very much into the occult. So there's a lot of syncretism, did some time in Jersey, if you know what I mean, And it's like, it was a lot of, I hate to say a lot of shucking and jiving, with Mr. Ali. But then he finally found his rhythm when it came to this more science. Like he found this thing that really connected with a lot of people, and that's what he ran with. But he dealt heavily into the occult. He was a hustler. He was in the streets, showing his sacred science to people, and so which doesn't sound too different than a lot of people that we see now in these major cities. So it's not new. This is not new.
Shawnee, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about on that part?
No, it was just so for me. This was amazing to read because being where I'm from, where I grew up, this wasn't. I'm kind of like you. The most I knew about it was what I saw on TV and Malcolm X and all that stuff. And so to have Pastor Damon go back to even before Elijah Muhammad and say, hey, let me bring you Noble Drew Ali and what was his name? W.D. Farad. Let me bring those. It was an eye opener for me, and it made me want to dig and do a little bit more research into Noble Drew Ali and all that stuff. But I think the big thing is that he capitalized on the questions that a lot of African Americans were having at that time, and the concerns they were having about their roots, about their identity. Who are we? And all that stuff. All these questions, surrounding a lot of African Americans and pretty much descendants of the enslaved Africans, because so much of our history, where we're from, our roots, how far back we can go was lost. And so you start capitalizing on those types of questions, those concerns, issues with the church at the time being, the larger church in America, of course, being silent to the condition of the Black life in America. So he's starting to capitalize on that. And you see a lot of people buying into it because he's telling them that hey, you're from this, your existence is valuable. So you're seeing him trying to have a theology of dignity for Black people at the time that they bought into. Unfortunately, it was false, and it was
big time.
In lies. So
that was one of the things me and Fredo BK was talking about before we got on, and I remember looking through the book and reading it. And I mean, I got like highlights all over the place. I'm just learning so much.
Me too.
I'm serious. Like I've been burning through highlighters going through this book and everything. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, wow, how in the world could someone be duped by this stuff? And you'll be able to see why as we go a little bit further in. So Noble Drew Ali is the first person that he talks about. Then he goes and he begins to talk about Master Farad Muhammad. Shadi, would you read that for me, please?
Sure. Master Farad Muhammad. Most scholars agree that W.D. Farad founded the Nation of Islam in 1930. The Nation of Islam teaches that W.D. Farad, or Master Farad, was a light-skinned Black Arab with wavy hair from Mecca and was Allah in person. According to NOI teaching, Farad appeared like a white man so that he could maneuver along whites unsuspectingly and teach the Black man his true identity. I highlighted that too because I was like,
and you couldn't even get through it without laughing. Like for me, I'm reading this stuff and it's like, come on, man. Like if the red flag don't go off in your head, it's like, come on, man. That don't even sound believable. And different things. So it just kind of, when I pulled up his picture, and that's why I love, digital stuff and images. Again, 70% of people are visual. So it was one thing to actually read it, but then it's another thing to pull up this dude's pictures and be like, wow, this is the guy who starts a Black nationalist movement. Like, seriously? You would think it'd be some dark Wesley Snipes, Bernie Mac, Black chocolate dude. We got this guy. No shade to his color, but he just did not seem to me as the person who I thought would have been the leader of the Nation of Islam. And then, so for me, as I began reading through the chapter, I started thinking like, man, for me, I think the people who probably are more upset about anything are people who are I guess not ethnically Islamic, but just regular Muslims, not people from the Nation of Islam. But, one thing that the book was talking, or the chapter was talking about, is how the Nation of Islam is really syncretistic in that it pulls from a lot of different religions in order to make up its teaching. It's not just one of its own thing. It's pulling from a lot of different sources, including the Bible. So it kind of blew me away on there. BK, did you have anything you wanted to add, bro?
I mean, once again, right? We see a pattern here because prior to him becoming the, you know, the Messiah for this particular set, what was he? He was a salesperson. He was a salesman. Right? He sold different, like, you know, tapestries and wares, you know, and you know, he also had his run-ins with the police, you know. So there's a pattern here. There's a pattern.
Yeah, it says he had like 50 aliases, no less than 50 aliases.
Yeah, it had no less than 50.
I'm like, Jesus, no aliases. That's who he was. Yeah. He was just Jesus. Yeah. He wasn't Jesus over here, and then
Ralph, and then Malik over there, and Chico down the block, and right.
I was just like 50 aliases, and even the So it says that the FBI's file for him says that he was from New Zealand, and he was born to a British father and Asian mother. And I'm like, already you should know that this is problematic when you can't even pinpoint old dude. Like you can't even, you don't even know where he's from, where he was born, anything like that. Christianity, fam, we know where Jesus was born. We know where he was from. We know all of that. We know his parents. We know all of these things. And there are no, you know, he doesn't have all these aliases like Master Farad Muhammad. That stood out to me immediately. I was like, fam, you a whole God.
And we're not going to cover the whole thing, but there was one part that says he taught that that Black people were the descendants of the God tribe Shabazz, the original man lost in the wilderness of North America. And he established the first temple of Islam in Chicago. I'm sorry, in Detroit, and then a second one in Chicago. And so I always thinking to myself, like, if these people don't rock with Jesus, if they don't want to rock with Yahweh because their big thing is, people begin to worship a white Jesus and everything, and of course the whole slavery piece. It's like, okay, well, where was your God during all of this stuff? So if you're saying that, your big problem with Christianity is like, okay, where was God when all this stuff was happening to Black people? It's like, well, where was your God at? And so it really doesn't have any answers for that. And then the other one that I thought about was the fact that, within the Christian religion, one of the things that we can really hang our hat on, of course, the resurrection in and of itself, but the fact that there's so many different prophecies that have come true, that are contained in the Bible. But in here, none of that can be said. And that's one of the great things Damon brings out near the end of the chapter, is that none of those things can be said of the Nation of Islam, and different things like that as well. So anybody else, BK or Shai, before we move on to the next person?
I'm good.
No, I'm good. You hit it on that one.
So we hit Noble Drew Ali, and then he talks about Master Farad Muhammad, and then here's somebody that everybody's probably very familiar with, is Elijah Muhammad, who started out as Elijah Poole. So this is, again, Elijah Poole heard Far's teaching at the Temple of Islam, enthusiastically accepted it, and quickly rose through the ranks, claimed that he was personally discipled by Fard for 3.5 years and was chosen to be his messenger. He was soon appointed by Fard himself to be the supreme minister of the laws-found Nation of Islam, and his name was changed from Fard to Elijah Kareem and then to Elijah Muhammad. And he began to claim that he was the messenger or prophet of Allah and that Fard was Allah in person. So all these different changes in names, the Nation of Islam itself, the name of the organization, or changed so many different times. And it's like, when y'all gonna make up your mind about, where this stuff is really, coming from, and everything. And maybe it was just different from me because a lot of my experience comes from media, the internet, TV, movies, et cetera, but it never seemed like the Nation of Islam really blossomed until Malcolm came on the stage and blew it up. But even then, even though he was pushing and talking about the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, I never really got the sense that he was a really, really big person. And maybe it just wasn't his, it's kind of hard to exceed Malcolm's influence. He was just a very striking personality, but I'm not sure. BK, you a whole lot closer, of course, being there in New York. What's your
well, I mean, it's kind of similar to like how the NBA was, right? We had a lot of great players.
Yeah.
And then we had MJ.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then all of a sudden, MJ became the face of the game, even though the game's been around for decades, way before there was a Michael Jordan. But when he came, all of a sudden, this massive attention came to the game because of this one particular person. Well, Malcolm is the same thing for the nation. He's their MJ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, there couldn't be an MJ if there wasn't an NBA. So really Elijah created the baseline in which, Malcolm can flourish in. So he played a major part, because without him being steady and steadfast in his organization, his leadership, you couldn't get a Malcolm X in the organization, and then once in the organization, take off the way he did.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Shadi, you got anything?
No, that's one of the things that that did it for me too. There was so many changes, so many name changes, so many belief changes. It was a lot. There were a lot of changes. The consistency was an issue for me. I'm just like, I need a notebook to walk around with just to talk about the history of the NOI, and I think that's indicative to just how much it's changing so much. It's indicative to its fruit, and the root of it all. So,
and I'm trying to think. This was way before the internet and cell phones and stuff. So when they started changing up the name of the groups and changing the name of the people, I'm like, how did they get these press releases out to the people to let everybody know, like, hey, we changing our name. We're no longer this.
Well, they have their own paper.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own publications, and then you would have these guys on every street corner. Well, at least in the major cities.
Gotcha.
You have a bunch of dudes in every corner of 125th Street giving you the final call.
Gotcha.
So that was their internet, their own publishing company. So,
Good stuff. Okay. All right. So next, of course, we all know this striking brother here, Malcolm. He was converted to the teachings of the nation through the influence of his brother Reginald, who was already in the nation. And Reginald shared his teachings with Malcolm when he visited him in Charleston State Prison in Boston, Massachusetts, where Malcolm was serving a 10-year sentence for armed robbery. And I think we don't have to dwell there too long. I think most people really know a lot about Malcolm X. We've all seen, the movies, prayerfully read his book. I remember reading his autobiography. Was one of the first books outside of assigned reading that I did when I was in school, reading his book. And matter of fact, here's a crazy thing, Shadi. When I was in high school, I used to cuss like really, really, really bad. I was it was horrible. But the crazy thing is, when you grow up, I grew up, my dad was a boxer, a drill sergeant, and a preacher, so it was like a light bulb. When I got inside the house, wasn't no cussing at all. I turned it right off. Go outside and turn it right back on. But I remember Miss Titus talking about cussing Kev. I gave myself a new nickname. But I remember there was a portion in his book where he talked about how people curse because they cannot find intelligent enough words to say to express themselves. And that impacted me so bad that I remember trying to stop cussing and realizing that I couldn't. As hard as I would try, I kept trying. And so I started having people punch me in the arm every time they heard me cuss. And then I go home with sore arms for like a week or two. But eventually I got to the place where cussing was no longer a thing for me. But that just all came as a result of reading Malcolm's book and everything. And then, Michelle jumping in. Of course, eventually, for those that may not know, he changed his name to El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz again after, leaving the Nation of Islam and everything like that as well. So have y'all been checking out Godfather of Harlem by chance?
No.
Mm-mm.
I heard it's good though. I heard it's really good.
Yeah, it's
a TV show, a
series.
It's on Epic, but in there, I forgot the brother's name that's playing Malcolm, but there's a scene in there that I haven't seen. I don't know if it's actually true, but the Malcolm they portrayed when he's trying to get back into the favor of Elijah Muhammad when he was silenced. He hears about the rumors of Elijah Muhammad's infidelities. And so Malcolm is so pressed to get back into the nation that he goes into the Quran trying to find verses in order to justify Elijah Muhammad's infidelities. And that's something that I had never seen. It kind of goes against what I thought I would know of Malcolm's character, that just seemed like he wouldn't do something like that. But again, I don't know how much of that is actually rooted in history and how much of it is for entertainment on television. But, nevertheless. So, all right. And then, of course, the next two people that have come, of course, after Elijah Muhammad dies and everything, it goes to Louis Farrakhan and then Wallace D. Muhammad, who was the son of Farad Muhammad and everything like that. So there was a split that Damon really details out in the nation, because there was, even though Louis Farrakhan had been appointed, or Wallace D. Muhammad had been appointed, he kept changing the name, and then they would change doctrine, even of his dad. And changing the things that that had already been taught in the Nation of Islam. They would go back and change stuff. And so I'm like, man, it just seemed like whoever is in power gets the chance to dictate whatever the theology and doctrine of the nation is going to be. but it kept switching based upon who was in leadership. And it just was a whole lot of flip-flopping going on. But Damon really did a good job of making it easy to follow as he details how all of these things went. And I think it was, I can't remember who it was on one of our lives before. I think it was Dr. Mason himself when he was talking about how important it was that we had footnotes or endnotes, whatever you want to call them, to document all this stuff. So it's not like the writers of this book are just saying this stuff. It's documented where you can go back and it's sourced, where you can go back and look it up and read it for yourself, which is so important because we don't want people thinking that we are, just asking people, or they are asking people to just take their word for it. This is stuff that can go back and be documented. So anybody had anything else they wanted to bring out on one of these two characters here?
You're funny. I think it's a great teaching moment for us as believers when it comes to, as urban apologists, we really love to contextualize the gospel. We want to express the gospel a certain way so that our audience can understand it. But, one can go too far with the contextualization. And that was the issue here, right? There was this battle, like Wallace wanted to, how are we to appropriately express Islam? And he felt like the nation at the time was not doing that. It was something completely different. Yeah. And it was we was Islam in name only. And he was trying to, return to a more classical expression of Islam, right? And of course, he lost out. And the Nation of Islam does not look like the Islam you find even in the Quran. And we'll talk about that more later. But they contextualize so much that it doesn't look like the belief that they say they even have to begin with. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that as believers, we want to make sure that we never get to that point.
Yeah. I think I was about to say the same thing, or a similar vein, that Elijah Muhammad's son, he was trying to push the nation to orthodox, to be more orthodox. And Farrakhan did that for a while. And he talked about during that time he was blind, right? So I think they said it was 3 years or so that he taught Orthodox Islam, and then he was like, "Nah, we about to go back to the Nation of Islam, resurrect some of Elijah Muhammad's teachings." And here's the thing, Ward, that's his name,
W.D. Fard,
right? Wallace Muhammad. He denounced some of his father's things. He denounced, because his father said that Farad was the Messiah, right? Or was Allah. Yeah. And Wallace, he denounced that. He said, "Nah, we about to get rid of that. That's not true at all." And so it was interesting to see. He didn't even agree with his own dad. And I was just like, whoa, red flag 5 million. Red flag 5 million. But Damon said some interesting things about Farrakhan that literally, he has a quote in here that a pastor actually said about Farrakhan.
Yeah, highlighted that too.
The appeal of Farrakhan to African Americans and people of color, just that he's that black voice, right? That speaks up and say that we're not going to take this and we're not going to be pawns and those types of things. So Farrakhan has that ability to be charismatic in his speech. Yeah. He speaks to people's insecurities, their skepticisms, their people disgruntledness. He speaks to those things and he crafts it in a way that it sounds Christian. Yeah. So when Damon read, he quoted that pastor that said Farrakhan preached the gospel, I almost fell out of my chair.
Let me read that, Shawnee. He said he said it was a black church that brought him in, and the preacher says, "I've heard as much gospel out of you today as I've heard from anybody. Can Farrakhan preach? Does he preach the gospel? Does he preach Jesus? He's done it today, and he's done it with conviction. Now those other little old idiosyncrasies or whatever, they ain't worth even talking about." Like, and I was like, wow, like that's, as Miss Titus, let's bring that back up. That's red flag central right there. That's time to go. And different things like that.
That's red flags to the church. Yeah. Red flag to everybody you've ever listened to. Like, Farrakhan is quoted to have called Hitler a great man, and I'm like, fam. But what it highlights is that we have to be very careful that we don't just saddle up to people because they sound as if they're in agreement with us, right? Because Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, they they speak against injustices in society and all those things, and so people become endeared to them.
Yeah.
And what this pastor does, the danger in what he did was he pretty much was letting everyone who was under the sound of his voice know that Farrakhan he pretty much was a Christian, that you can go and follow the teachings of Farrakhan because those are in sync with biblical Christianity. And so now you have a bunch of people, but potentially could be led astray and led away from Christianity and just filled with just all type of erroneous doctrine because you had a pastor stand up and put the stamp of approval on Farrakhan. So to every leader, every pastor, even to content creators, who's on your channel? Who are you allowing to give a voice to those that are entrusted, that consider you a trusted source? We have to consider that and be careful about that, because what that pastor did that day was potentially dangerous and detrimental to a lot of people that were listening to him.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to bring out and y'all gonna go get the book yourselves, but I did want to that quote you were talking about with all the changes that he made in there. Said among his theological reforms, talking about Walid Muhammad, were several renouncements: the teaching that Fard was Allah in person, his father's status as a prophet, and the NOI cosmology, including the history of Yaqub, which taught that white were blue-eyed devils. So he goes and starts, changing up all of this stuff. But what I want to get into now is really, Damon closes out the chapter by giving and detailing some of the theology that's included in the Nation of Islam. And I think I love the way that they set this stuff up, because it lets us know, hey, what are their core beliefs? How does that relate with Christianity? And then how do we witness to these people? How do we apply apologetics to what they believe? But also, how do we win these people over? And he begins to talk about that. So the first thing that he talks about is deity and everything. BK, would you read that for us, bro?
Sure. The Nation of Islam claims that they believe in one God, like monotheistic Orthodox Islam, but the NOI is actually polytheistic, teaching plainly that there have been many gods throughout history, and that the first God created himself out of triple darkness from a single atom 78 trillion years ago.
Thank you, Miss Titus. There's another one. Like, come on, man. Like seriously, like I read that and I was like, maybe Damon, let me go back and make sure, I had to go back and look up the actual quote. I was like, let me make sure he got this stuff right. But like that, and I don't want to make fun too much. Y'all know I'm trying to always be the sensible person. But like that just doesn't even make any sense to me. Like the God created himself. That was the first red flag for me. Like, come on, man. Like that just I'm not even sure. But then he talks about the Trinity in Jesus, the virgin birth, the deity of Jesus, and the resurrection. So there's a lot of different things. I'm just throwing this up there. This is just a kind of summarize some of the different things that were talked about in there. What stuck out to you, BK, on the things in this particular segment in theology?
I mean, it's funny because a Muslim would have issues with the teachings of the Nation of Islam.
Big time.
This idea of a self-creating God. Mm-hmm. You don't find that in the Quran. The Quran says that Allah created triple stage darkness, not that he came from triple stage darkness. Mm-hmm. Like Farrakhan is on record teaching that at Savior's Day. Every year they have this thing called Savior's Day. It's this big, convocation. And he teaches that Allah came from a single red blood cell that spin in outer space through centrifugal force, and it was through that within triple stage darkness that Allah emerged. You don't find that in the Quran. Mm-hmm. That's not in the Quran. Allah created the triple stage dark. He didn't come from that. So that's a serious issue right there. It's like, this is not Islam. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he does. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shani. Go ahead and jump.
No, I was just about to say, even in there, talk about the deity of God and that God created himself, and there were, millions of gods. God also died. And I'm just like, the God that
Say
created
that again. Rewind that again so I can put the red flag up.
So I have to find it. So he pretty much talks about how it says after the death, it says but the NOI is actually polytheistic, teaching plainly that there have been many gods throughout history, and that the first God created himself out of triple darkness from a single atom 78 trillion years ago. After the death of the original God, the universe was ordered and ruled by a divine council of 24 black gods. And I'm like, right there in and of itself is a contradiction, right? Yeah. Because the God that created himself also died. Didn't he stop himself from dying? I'm confused.
Why wouldn't he create himself again? Like,
right. But it just highlights just the foundational truths of the NOI is illogical. And we in the book there's a great chapter by Pastor Brandon Washington just talking about philosophy, and just how do we evaluate the world and a worldview and what makes a worldview credible. This is just illogical. It begins to collapse on itself in the very first tenet of its beliefs, which is the deity of God. Unlike Christianity, where Christianity is the viable worldview because it's logical, it's true, and it's existentially viable. And the thing about the Nation of Islam is they want to they say that the white man is the devil, and they just want to swap things, right? They want to swap what they consider to be the white people or white supremacy, introduce all these evils into the world. Now we just want black supremacy. I just want now let's just flop everything over, and that's not the way this works. That's not what will bring about true peace. That was not what's going to bring about any type of justice or anything like that. The only thing that we know and we are a witness to is the gospel. That's it. The gospel is the solution. And you're just trying to change the color of who's in power, who's the oppressor, who's the ruler, that you're just creating the same problem, just in a different hue.
Their theology has more in common with Mormonism than classical Islam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they have Scientology kind of.
Yeah, I saw that in there too.
Yeah. In there as well. A lot of syncretism. Again, very illogical, nonsensical. And a lot of members have the nerve to say, how could you believe in the Bible? Well, how could you believe that Jesus rose from the dead? Some of this stuff is like aliens, God creating himself, dying.
Oh, don't forget the UFO, the will. Don't forget the will.
Yeah, the UFO. I mean,
where Elijah Muhammad is in right now.
The
mothership.
Yeah.
Right.
So, one thing that stuck out to me, and I think this is the thing that, not that I needed any convincing, but this is the thing that really stuck out is that Nation of Islam seems to be all about loyalty. In that, hey, we're here for all the black people. We can do away with everybody else. But the gospel is not about loyalty. It's about love. And that's one thing I didn't see written anywhere in Damon's chapter when he's explaining the Nation of Islam. It's not about Allah's love. It's not about W.D. Farge or Noble Drew Ali's love for black people or anybody else. It's really about just ethnicity and affirming people because of their ethnicity, not because I have a love for you because you're made in my image or made in the image of Allah or anything else. It doesn't have anything to do with any of this stuff that's being done. What did Allah do for them other than the promise that he's going to save them from the white man? But the thing about the gospel is that the gospel has love for all people. And that is the impetus behind everything that God did in his creation, everything that he does in redemption, everything that he does is rooted and grounded in love. And even sharing the spirit with us is an opportunity for us to experience the same love that he's been showing the Son for all of eternity. We get to share in that same love that Jesus has had for all eternity. And that's missing from the Nation of Islam. It's missing from that. And that's the essential element that I think draws people with, So I was like, man, overall, it doesn't sell me on this. It might affirm the dignity of me if I don't understand the gospel. It might make me feel better as a black man, but it just doesn't fit together. It just doesn't fit together for
Right.
me.
And Allah can't be loving until He created people,
Someone
because
to love.
right, because He's
Exactly.
not triune. So how long did Allah exist without loving?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I brought up the point. It's just like they're trying to swap stuff. Like we're the gods now. We're gonna get you. Sound kind of
Black
familiar.
Mormonism.
That's the next chapter.
Black Mormonism.
Yeah, and I learned that, BK, from talking about why God, and I'm going to be talking about this. I'm actually putting together a teaching now on the Trinity for Trinity Sunday, and everything about it's this beautiful book. I've been pumping it up, Delighting in the Trinity by Michael Reeves, where he talks about, a lot of people know that God is love, so they know that, but it's why, or excuse me, that He is triune. But why He has to be triune, and BK, you just alluded to it. If He's not triune, how can He say that intrinsically He is love if He has no one to love for all of eternity? Then Him being who He is dependent upon what He does. He has to create someone in order to be loved, because a single person God cannot be loving, not eternally. So, but again, this God is not even claiming to be eternal. He created Himself. There's so many questions.
And it's not even the same God of the Quran. This is somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
This is somebody else.
Millions of gods. I mean, it's what did he say? How many gods is there? It's just all kinds of gods, right?
You'll thank me later, Michelle.
It's just all kinds of
Black
gods.
Mormonism, I'm telling you.
Yeah. I think one thing that really stood out in this chapter for me that I appreciated was Damon's encouragement to pray before you begin engaging with anyone from the Nation of Islam. And we were here, we're talking about this stuff is really out of this world. But here's the thing, people believe this, people have bought into this. This is a lot of people's worldview, and we have to be prayerful when we're engaging with anybody, to pray and ask the Lord really to, first of all, soften our hearts, because again, we talked about this last time about being argumentative, about feeling as if you know what the person is going to say, about ignoring the fact that there's a person involved here, sometimes families involved here. But prayer is something that as apologists, as y'all are apologists, as those of us who share the gospel, as believers in general, prayer is such an essential part of our lives. A pastor, he often says, a Christian at their best is a Christian at prayer. And I think that was so salient and so beautiful for Damon to start off. Listen, I'm going to tell you what they believe. Let me tell you how you go and address this. Pray. And I thought that was such a very important point to stop. And it made me stop and even pray as I was reading the chapter, just praying for those who may be caught up in this doctrine, praying for those who are dealing with, witnessing to them, evangelizing them, that they praying for myself, when I engage with others, that our words are seasoned with love, that we present the gospel, that we're listeners. And that we really just have the heart of the Father towards those caught up in this. So I really enjoyed that part too.
Amen. BK, I want to. We're going to close in the next 5 minutes or less, because we want everybody to shoot over to BK's channel on YouTube and get ready for Bodega Night as well. But any closing comments from you, bro?
Again, it's. We see these massive holes in their theology, right? And the question is, then why are people drawn to this? And it's because, and Delicate Flower alluded to this earlier, it tries to answer those two existential questions. Who am I and what is my purpose? What is my identity and what is my agency? And the Nation of Islam really tries to fill in that void. And once you accept that narrative, you accept anything else that comes after that. So if, big head scientists made white people, cool. My hair's nappy because I was cursed, cool. God created Himself from a single blood cell in outer space, I'm with that. As long as you affirm my personage, as long as you do that, I will accept whatever Black anime Mormonism theology you want me to have.
That's so good. That's so good.
And what is it that there's the 5 things that a worldview has to have is an origin, meaning, origin, meaning, destiny, morality, and I think destiny. I think it's somewhere in there. Did I miss one of y'all? I know I've heard that from I don't want to say his name. I don't want to trigger anybody, but it has to have those essential elements. Y'all know where I'm going. But yeah, origin, purpose, meaning, morality, and destiny.
Right.
You know, in order for a worldview to make sense, it has to have all of those elements. And the Nation of Islam clearly does not have those elements included in its particular thing.
I mean, they get stalled at their cosmology, right? Their origin of their God. You get stalled right there.
Yeah.
Because your God is a contingent being. He's made of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So your God is already limited off rip. Off rip, your God is limited.
Yeah.
Your God.
So we can't go nowhere else. Now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
yeah, and Audrey, you coming through with great comments too. Really appreciate you chiming in tonight. I wanted to close with something that I learned from Elsie, and I just never forget this. And it goes back to what you were saying, Shani, that Damon had in here, in the importance of prayer, in engaging people, whether it's Hebrew Israelites, Nation of Islam, or any other religion. The importance of prayer, because it's not information that's going to win people; it's inspiration. Because the problem is not in their head, it's in their heart.
Yeah.
So if their heart is not drawn to God, you can feed them all the information you want into their head. That's not where the issue is. The problem is in the heart. And so feeding information to the head is not going to do anything. So I always allow that to help me temper my comments and emotions towards people, and really engaging in prayer for them in different things, because I realize if the Father doesn't draw them, my information is not going to do it either. So that's for sure. So anybody else have anything before we close in prayer tonight? We'll pray for those caught up in the nation.
I will say this: if you or your family or anyone you love or know is caught up into some type of brick, some type of
explain that for everybody that may not know.
Religious identity cult, whether it's Hebrewism, Hebrew Israelism, Nation of Islam, Comedicism, whatever. Let Damon's story be a testimony to you that God is able.
Yeah.
He was a little boy saying that God is everywhere after chanting every day that God is a man. But he's in a closet hiding from his siblings, saying Allah sees, like God sees everything and God is everywhere. And then only for him to turn 16 years old after having grown up in the Nation of Islam to become a Christian. He became saved, his mother and his sister. So let his story it be a light, hope for you. Let it be a seed of hope for you that God is able. To keep plowing, keep continuing, keep fighting, keep preaching the gospel, keep sharing, because it was a man called Mr. Brown that shared with them the gospel, and him and his mom and his sister was saved. So I just wanted to share that for those that may be dealing with family members, loved one, friends that are caught up in these types of movements.
Amen. Amen. So if you haven't, please, you all go out and get the book again, Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. Dr. Eric Mason, so many different other people. Please go get your copy. Support this incredible work that's out there. I know it will bless you, bless your friends, bless your family, and your community. So let's pray. Father in heaven, Lord, we're so grateful for the opportunity to come together and share our insights from this book. We thank you for Pastor Damon Richardson and everything that he provided, all of the information that he provided, and the time and sacrifice that he put into making this particular chapter possible. Thank you for freeing him from the deception in the Nation of Islam and utilizing him to go back and win people from that community. May this particular book and of course the gospel reach every person within that community, God. Draw them to you. Draw them to your love, God, and let them see, Lord God, the glorious light of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We just thank you for all of those in our community who are continuing to pray for the success and the impact of this book. All of the glory goes to you, and we lift up your name. And so we thank you for it in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
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 Amen. Love y'all so much. Thank you for joining me on tonight. We got all kinds of different things coming up on Greater Works channel. So if you haven't subscribed, please take a moment and opportunity to do so. And everything, we'll see you back on Sunday. I'll be doing a teaching on Sunday and different things like that as well for the next 2 Sundays, going up into Trinity Sunday. So stick around and we'll be sure to bless you with more content. Keep praying for us and we'll see you next week. God bless you. Love you so much.